My intent for making this video is to share my plan for building a low-cost battery charging rig for the battery stick cell groupings found in early Honda Civics and Insights. Now I'm a photographer, but I play with old electronic equipment as a hobby, and my neighbor had this car. These cells were pulled from a 2003 Civic Hybrid that had been sitting for 4 years. Now her daughter wants to drive it. She's of driving age, and among the other issues, the IMA integrated motor assist would not, the circuitry wouldn't charge the batteries as they are wired in series in the car. So I had to service the pack by taking it apart. Now, removing the battery pack and disassembling it is fairly intuitive and straightforward, and there's already tutorials available, so I won't cover that. Now, there's what they have here is actually 120 cells. You can see one over here. Alright, so what you have here is a set of 6 cells. They're 1.2 volt cells, so that creates a 7.2 volt stick. Each cell, as you can see, is about a D size. It's a low impedance Panasonic nickel metal hydride battery. Very similar to the NiCad battery, slightly different. And they're all lined up in series. You have 20 sticks, and again 120 cells. So you have 144 volts, and these series of 6 have been tack welded and then shrink wrapped into these 7.2 volt sticks. Now that's a nominal voltage. Since a single cell should be actually deliver you 1.4 volts or so when they're fully charged, and really they shouldn't remain below 1 volt for any length of time. A charged stick should be about 8.4 volts, and it shouldn't stay below 6 volts, even though it's rated at 7.2 volts. Now that said, when I pulled these batteries, each 7.2 volt stick was reading about a half a volt to 3 volts per stick, so really bad. They were deeply discharged, and the state of charge was so unbalanced that charging each stick was necessary. Now, these nickel metal hydrides are susceptible to overcharging by allowing too much current to go through them. It's not so much voltage dependent. And even a trickle charge, if it's left on for too long, can overcharge them over time. So this is one method of doing it. I went ahead and built a charging rig to charge all 20 at once. Now one way of charging it would be to give it a very high current, as much as it will allow before the batteries get too hot, and then taper off that charge to allow the pack to cool as you get towards the end of your charge. But really, you can do a mellow charge, and that would be maybe 1/10 of what the batteries are rated for an amp hour. So these are 6.5 amp hour batteries. So if you gave it a charge of maybe 650 milliamp hours, for 10 hours, actually 15 hours, there's not that much efficiency when it comes to charging them. So you give them that much, that would be a good charge. And to limit the current, what I've done here, I've ganged all the negative poles together on the pack. And on the positive one, each one, I've put a 15 ohm resistor in series. This is and then I have a 13 volt conventional lead acid battery as my charger, and then it in turn is being charged by a battery charger so I don't deplete it. So it's acting as a buffer. As charge comes in, it can supply as the charge varies on the batteries. So, 13 volts divided by 15 ohms is about 870 milliamps, which is going to be coming between these two circuits here. So when the circuit's in the battery, I'm finding by putting an ammeter in series here that during its charge they're just basically drawing about 350, 400 milliamps. And then the resistors, they do get a little bit hot, but that's well under the 13 watt rating on these resistors. So that's well within their capacity to do so. And so what I have here, actually in retrospect I should have gotten ones for a larger battery. But these are leaf spring contacts, battery terminals, actually meant for a AAA battery. But I have them up on a little platform that allows the positive to sit right on the lip. And these things drop in very easily. There's your positive square contact. I've also labeled them. So you just press it against the contact, drop it in, and it's set, and it's charging. and it just drops in. You have to be very careful when you build it that your tolerances allow you to just drop them in, and you can have these all in and charging very quickly. And then you would just take your terminals, go to your positive and your negative, and now it's putting a charge through each one. You can have just one charging, or you can have all 20 charging. And then when it comes to discharge them, if you're forming them and you want to test them, now once they're charged and you've got your 8.4 volts and they're all reading a nice voltage, the real test is to put a heavy load on it and see if this thing sags with the voltage. So what I got was one of those carbon load battery testers that you'd use for a lead acid battery that really pulls it down to about, well, it takes about 20 amps of pull because it's maybe 4/10 of an ohm. And so I would clamp it on there, use my stopwatch, and I would test each battery, how bad it had sagged after 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and up to 30 seconds. And typically the voltage was holding steady at 5 seconds, and by the time you were down to 30 seconds of all that 20 amp draw, you were down to maybe 7 volts flat on the thing. And then they pop right back up to a resting voltage of about 8 volts once you took the load the load tester off them. Now to discharge all of them, see right now they're charging, and you can feel that they're starting to warm up just a little bit. You can feel the resistors there warming up a bit. So they're getting about a 350, 400 milliamp charge. And of course you could always put an ammeter to the negative and then over here and see what's running through them. But once they were all charged, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but to discharge them for about 10 hours, because now what you've got here, oh, and on the, when you are charging them, if you were going to run a volt test here, let's see here, let's get it, okay, so between any of the terminals here, or between the terminal and the ground as a common, you're getting about, at this point, because I was in the middle of discharging them a few minutes ago, it's actually pretty low. There's only 8 volts coming on here. Now, of course, if you were to take the battery out, it's now going to be much higher because it's even going through the resistor. That's not causing a voltage drop. That's handling your current. So there you go. You're actually up around 13 volts. And that's what it'll pop up to as soon as you get the battery out of here. But that's okay. You're running a good 350 milliamps. You're running it at a good healthy voltage. And you're getting a really good charge on these batteries. I found that under the load test, they did fantastic. And these batteries were down to maybe a 1/10 of a volt, maybe per cell. I mean, when it was just ridiculously discharged. I thought they were beyond hope. And I'm pulling all kinds of power. I've had these things now to discharge them. You take what you were charging, your 12 volts here. Now suddenly your deck, instead of being 12 volts across here, it's about 8.4. It's an amalgamation of all the voltages. This might sound crazy, but you short circuit the thing. And now what you're doing is I took a meter and you're basically pulling about 600 milliamps per cell. So you've got, and in fact this will get pretty warm over here. And these will get pretty hot too, but they can take it. So I'm going to discharge them at that rate. It should take about 9 hours to fully discharge them if they're delivering what they should. Now I had these discharging from 1 in the afternoon and now it's 7. So these have been discharging. I put a meter to them and they're still delivering. And so and the voltage is still up around 7.2. They've been dropping steadily. Some of them are like 7.1, and this is after about 6 hours of drawing at about 600 milliamps. So I'm pretty happy with it so far. So I want to see if they'll actually give me the full 10 hours at 600, 650 milliamps like I'm drawing it here. At the very least, after I recharge them, I want to see if I get a better test when I put the 20 amp load on them to see how the voltage sags after maybe about 30 seconds of really pulling a lot of amperage out of them. But anyway, here's the rig. So I made it out of wood, and all the negatives, it's quite heavy with all the batteries in it. You've got all the negatives are tied together, and then with each one, it would have been nice if I had put a rail over here that was made of copper and put all the contacts right on a rail, but instead I did a wire to each, and then I ganged them all together onto a high amperage jumper cable. Then on the other side, I ran all the positives again, and then I ran it to a common rail for the positive right there. So there you have it. And then so pulling them and testing them is very, very easy. And you can see the whole rig here. I just got them perfectly spaced, and you start, over here, so that, you're in register. Make sure you've got your positive. Just anchor it in and click it in, and you're good to go. Anchor and click. And so I'm finding I can charge all of them at once, and here I am. I'm right now discharging them all at once, getting a good discharge. And I think that these batteries that I thought were completely dead and would be unserviceable seem to be taking a great charge, and they're taking a long, slow discharge, and they were taking a very fast discharge too under a torture test. So I'm pretty optimistic, and just wanted to let you know, because everybody has a lead acid battery. There's one in the car. Everybody has a battery charger. The wood was scrap wood, and I have plenty of resistors. These I actually bought because I didn't have 20 of them, and they cost about 40 cents a piece. Got them from Newark Electronics. Now, in retrospect, I probably would have gotten, I'd say maybe 10 ohm instead of 15. Really give it a vigorous charge and discharge. Again, with a 10 to 15 watt power rating. These are 13 watts, and they seem to be doing just fine. And in retrospect, I probably would have used some bigger contacts, maybe ones that were meant for C or D cell batteries. Although, with this little ledge of about a half an inch, a quarter inch, I'm finding that they are hitting the contacts pretty well. So maybe these spring ones for a AA battery are sufficient. So there's the rig, and it's only took a couple hours to put together. And now I'm charging all the batteries. I charged them all in 12 hours. Now I'm going to discharge them over 10 hours. I'm going to charge them again for 12 hours, test them again, and I'm going to put them in the car, and we'll see how they do. All right, hope that helped you. And that's it.